and he's in trouble. He's going to run. He's going to get the first down.
Don't sleep on those legs. Oh, he faked the slide. Sauce time. The Pitt Panthers have pulled a stunning upset over the West Virginia Mountaineers.
And Johnny Majors gets a ride across the field.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Simplify. As always, I'm your host, Zach Kaminsky. I'm joined tonight by my co-hosts, Mason and Kent. We do have a special guest. He will be joining us for the ACC Preview in the latter half of the episode. That's Ryan Donnelly from Flipping the Field, another college football podcast. Great one. Go check them out. But first, before we get to anything else, Mason, Kent, how are we doing tonight?
Great, Zach. A little over 2 weeks until Backyard Brawl, so really looking forward to it. Really getting excited. Coming down to the wire now.
Yeah, I can smell it. I can
hear them playing Thunderstruck during the opening kickoff. And I can hear the students going absolutely buck wild on the back of the Heinz Field seats.
You mean ass crusher sheets?
Yeah. Did you say ass crusher?
Ass crusher stadium?
It's the official podcast line to call it Heinz. I will not be calling it whatever abomination it is. All right. Before we get to our ACC preview, I want to hit on some notes, some news from last time, since we've last talked about Pitt football. On August 8th, which was about a week ago, Pitt got a silent commit in their 2023 class. Silent commit being that he sent out the pat signal on Twitter, but no one claimed it to be them. I've heard reporting that it's Darian Zipperer, a wide receiver out of Florida, but in looking at the big targets for Pitt, right, if it could be one of them, the big targets that are still left for Pitt to get are Jalen Thompson, who is a defensive end out of Michigan, who is committing on August 22nd. He holds offers from Cincinnati, Michigan State, Penn State, Ohio State, and Pitt. I believe that's his top five, if I'm not mistaken. The second is Desmond Umeozulu, who's a defensive end from Maryland. His top four includes Ohio State, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Pittsburgh, and he will be committing on the 29th. And then the most important, and this would absolutely blow my mind and essentially make me happy for the rest of the year, is Hakeem Williams. He set his commit date on September 23rd, which is during Pitt's bye week. He will be visiting campus again on an official visit for the Tennessee game. So if you have the ability to go to that game, you should be there. And just to remind everyone, his top six includes Pitt, Florida State, Georgia, Miami, Alabama, and Texas A&M.
I mean, if you didn't have enough motivation to go to the Tennessee game and just absolutely belt Sweet Caroline before, like, that's just a nice little cherry on top, too. Nobody can say no to Sweet Caroline. Getting Hakeem Williams there for that game, I think, is a huge kind of step for recruiting. I know we've been, talking about this for a while, but that would be, a nice little send-off right before his commitment.
Yeah, completely agree. Hakeem Williams definitely would be, if we get him and don't get any of the other ones, I'll still be happy. Granted, I want more than one, but he's definitely the prize to be won. So,
yeah, I've said it before, he is a program-changing commit just for the talent that he brings a wide receiver. And, if you bring him to pair up with Kenny Minchie, both as freshmen, that could be a dangerous team as freshmen, and then, get them together for 3 years and see what happens. I will note that his mom on Twitter, who Narduzzi always retweets, seems to love Pittsburgh. So I am reading into that way too much, but I think that if you won over the family, it might be easier to win over the actual recruit.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
And you know who loves, you know what song everybody loves, even families? Sweet Caroline.
Great family songs. Sweet Caroline, Party on Fifth Avenue, Thunderstruck.
Just anything played from Heinz Field speakers, really.
I mean, yeah. Mo Bamba, obviously.
Yeah.
That is the most family-friendly song they play over the speakers.
Fuck. Shit. Bitch. We're earning explicit this episode.
We're earning our what?
The E, the explicit.
Oh, but I actually had to uncheck the E for the volleyball episode. I think I might have cursed one time in it. I think I said shit once.
FCC be on that ass.
I'm gonna slip it by the FCC, and if they come for me, I'm dying in a shootout.
He died doing what he loved.
Saying curse words on a podcast. All right, fuck it. Let's get to our next news item, and that is the AP Top 25 poll.
How are we going to go through this? Are we going to go bottom to top, or what they got right, what they got wrong?
I think we'll go bottom to top. Or we'll go top to bottom because I do want to read out some of the teams that received votes, and then we'll go what they got right, what they got wrong.
Cool.
All right. No surprise here in the top three. It is Alabama 1, Ohio State 2, Georgia 3, Clemson 4, Notre Dame 5, A&M 6, Utah 7, Michigan 8, Oklahoma 9, Baylor at 10. Then you have Oregon at 11, Oklahoma State at 12, North Carolina State at 13, USC at 14, Michigan State at 15, Miami, Florida at 16, Pitt at 17. Coming in at 18 is Wisconsin, 19 is Arkansas, Kentucky's at 20, and the last 5 is Ole Miss at 21, Wake Forest at 22, Cincinnati at 23, Houston at 24, and BYU at 25. Other teams receiving votes, and this would be their equivalent position if the poll went past 25. Tennessee would have come in at 26, Texas at 27, Iowa 28, Penn State 29, LSU at 30. Then more group of 5, you have Fresno State at 31, UCF at 33, Kansas State 38, UNC at 41, and then I just want to point this out that Nebraska got exactly 1 vote.
Yeah, what beat writer in Nebraska gets a vote? Like, can we process elimination? Who put them in there?
They post who voted what. I'm gonna go look it up right now. You start vamping on the list real quick. Someone give me a take, please.
I will say I was looking at, while we're on the topic of votes, I was looking at basically every AP writer's votes just to kind of see where Pitt was at. And it's really funny to see the range that we had. I saw us as high as 9 and like as low as 24. So shout out to, I think it was like one of the beat writers from like Ohio, but not Ohio State. It was like Dayton.
Yeah, Dayton. It was the guy from Dayton. I saw it too.
Personally. Yeah, he had us up there at 9. So shout out to him for seeing the vision.
Yeah, I think he had us at 9. Somebody else had us at 10. But yeah, you're right. I was looking at that too, and I thought the range was also pretty funny. Before the list got released, I was like kind of thinking somewhere between 15 and 20. And we ended up kind of right in the middle of that. I know that Noah had said he thought like 16 to 18, so I think that was right on the dot too. So were there any? Who were like the biggest surprises to you?
Well, I'll say that I think that Pitt's ranking of 17 feels just about right. I did my research. The person who put Nebraska at 25, even though the one single vote, was the Oklahoma State. Oh, it was Brett McMurphy, who is a notable college football personality. I think that's
a pretty big name, actually.
Yeah, he's a big reporter. I think that Clemson and Notre Dame are too high. I think that they're being overrated. Clemson, I mean, looking at what last season, at the end of the season, they were 14 in the AP poll, and they jumped up to 4 with not a lot changing on offense, which dragged them down. Notre Dame, I think, is unproven. Their quarterback, Tyler Buckner, does not have a lot of experience. I think if I were to move them down, I'd bump Utah up. I'd bump Michigan up. I'd bump Baylor up above them, and I'd bring North Carolina State into the top 10. Other than that, I'm shocked that the group of 5, their highest ranked team is at 23. That really came as a shock to me.
Yeah, I mean, and it's literally Cincinnati again, who's kind of been carrying them and BYU a little bit, who also cracked in there. But it makes sense, I think, for them. Some teams obviously that I thought were a little bit high. USC at 14, I get it. I get what they're building there. We haven't seen shit yet. Could I see them finishing that high? Yeah, probably. But let's chill out a little bit. You can hear a little bit of the spite in my voice. And then Miami coming in right above us. I think they probably are in that range. But obviously not sold on them yet. We'll talk more about that in the ACC preview.
Yeah, I was a little unhappy that Miami ended up one spot in front of us, and USC also ended up a few spots in front of us. I was a little surprised, like Zach, to see Clemson as high as they were. I expected them to be maybe a little bit lower. Same with Notre Dame. I'm glad they put Michigan lower on the AP poll than they did on the coaches poll. I thought Michigan was way too high on the coaches poll.
Where'd they land there? I forget.
They were like 4 or 5.
Oh, wow.
At what school?
Michigan. Am I wrong on that? I kind of want to double check, but
I think until otherwise proven, I think they're probably middle top 10.
Yeah, you could probably move them over, like bump Notre Dame down to that spot, move Michigan up there.
all right. They weren't quite as high. They were 6 on the coaches poll, but yeah, I think 8's more appropriate in my mind. But they had them ahead of A&M and Utah on the coaches poll. So I'm glad. I don't know. I'm not as high on Michigan this year, personally. So I was glad to see that, and I was also a little salty. I mean, Michigan State, it was pretty much the 3 teams that I'm like, I have just a sour taste in my mouth about. Miami, Michigan State, and USC all right ahead of us.
Yeah.
In order, too.
Yeah. Like conspiracy theory. We're getting far down on the iceberg conspiracy of Pitt football and the AP poll.
Yeah, I think this is intentional, and we should defund the AP poll. And
verbal meme, me in the Always Sunny meme, just trying to connect the dots of how this happened with Charlie Day.
what? Let's talk about the AP poll, Mac. I've been dying to talk about the AP poll.
Do you think the league would have been higher if Hartman, if the news hadn't come out about Hartman like before the list came out?
Maybe.
It came out 6 days ago, so it would have came out on the 10th. But one would think that they would have had to have their ballots in maybe prior to. But
I feel like they cast their votes pretty soon before they actually release the list. But because I mean they do it every week, so
I think that some writers submitted it early because you can see Wake Forest as high as 11 on this poll, if I'm not missing any other appearances. And then they sort of spread the vote out between the high teens and low 20s. If anything, I think they would have bumped up maybe to like the 19-20 range, but I don't think they're better than Kentucky or Arkansas.
Yeah, I think where they're at is probably good. Who do you guys the biggest snub from this list though of those that received a couple votes?
I was
Um,
surprised Texas wasn't on it. I'm not sure if I would say they're the biggest snub, but I was surprised. I was thinking that they would be on the list. Um, maybe Tennessee. I'm really happy Penn State's off of it.
Yeah, I love that. I really don't think Penn State will end up not being on it at the end of the year. Would love that, but it is funny to see all the Penn State fans get mad about that this early.
I'm looking at the receiving votes. I think that Tennessee will be ranked by the time we play them, just because they're already 26 and someone is bound to lose to put them into the top 25.
And who does Tennessee get week one?
Well, Cincinnati or Arkansas are guaranteed. One of them is guaranteed to lose, and Tennessee's playing like some
Cupcake?
yeah. So
Yeah.
I think they're guaranteed a spot in the top 25 by week 2. I do honestly think that Kansas State, who only got 14 points in the poll, is being snubbed. I think they're a lot better than people are giving them credit for right now. Texas and Iowa will make entrances into the poll and then fall out at some point. I think that of the group of 5 teams down here, I think App State, Fresno, and Utah State, whoever's better, like whoever's the best on Mountain West, right? Between like Fresno, Boise, Air Force, and Utah State, so will probably end up ranked, and I think App State will probably end up ranked out of the Sun Belt.
Yeah, because they're gonna they'll win their conference games. They'll probably make some runs there, but yeah, other than those kind of teams that were ranked right above us, though, I think it's a pretty solid AP poll. Nothing really that jumps out at me as too crazy, which I guess is usually the case with college football.
Yeah, I mean, I think the only other thing is like they probably should have moved up one of Cincinnati or Houston farther. I think there is some disrespect happening to those 2 teams, and I think Kentucky might be able to go over like Wisconsin and Arkansas, but that's sort of nitpicky. I do think, like you said, Mason, it is a pretty good list. It is pretty level-headed. Besides maybe the USC and the Clemson overrates by our eyes, but
Yeah, and you could ask, if you asked all the 25 teams, or probably even more so the few that just missed the list, they probably are motherfucking it, but that's the benefit of having a good season and being on the AP poll, I guess.
Absolutely. And like even the teams that received votes like make sense, and even the teams that I would complain about like Clemson, Notre Dame, Kent had thinks Michigan will be a little worse. I think that USC will not, maybe shouldn't be top 15, but I don't think I would argue against them being in the top 25 right now.
Oh, absolutely not. Yeah. It's just kind of shuffling the deck of these teams now that they're up here, I think.
Right, yeah. I do want to point out this is the first time Penn State has been unranked in the preseason poll since 2015.
Wow. Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
Ladies and gentlemen, fuck Penn State. All right. I think that's all for news. And on the other side of the transition, it'll be time for the ACC preview.
Go right ahead.
Let's do it.
Girls ask me for that Willie D, that's how I know they feeling me. It's Simple C, the pimpin' B, what got these bitches clipped to me. You may be at the game, I guarantee you we in different seats. I seen you in the nosebleeds, but where I'm at, that isn't cheap. In the Benz, in a Jeep, make $1 million in a week.
All right, everyone, welcome to our ACC preview. I'd like to welcome on our special guest, Ryan Donnelly from the Flipping the Field podcast. How are we doing tonight, Ryan?
Doing great, man. Got a belly full of pizza, heart full of dreams. Can't ask for anything more.
Well, unfortunately, we're asking you tonight about ACC football, which might actually ruin your night, depending on some of these teams you talk about.
That's very possible, man. I don't know. It's we got a great conference though. I'm excited about it. People are saying it's one of the most beautiful conferences in the country, and no one else has a conference like this. It's very, very gorgeous. No, I like a few teams here. We got it's great in the sense that it's like it's kind of like a bad SEC year. You have like 5 teams that should win 10 games, but none of them are actually like great teams. And then you have the rest of the conference absolutely sucks, which is like basically like mid 2000s SEC. It's great. I love it.
Well, all that means is that we're going to have a lot of teams ranked by the end of the year, which is all that matters. Yeah. So we're going to talk through this. We're going through tiers. I've got 4 tiers for the ACC, kind of less than usual. We're going to start kind of speeding through the bottom tier. And I'll just actually lump them all in here at once. We've got Georgia Tech, Duke, and Syracuse all in tier 4, titled Hell. Georgia Tech, everyone sucks there. The coach is getting fired mid-season. Duke, they have an interesting head coach, but nothing's going to happen in year 1 because it is hard to get good players to Duke. And Syracuse has Sean Tucker, and that's about it.
You love Sean Tucker. I don't know. He's incredible, man. He is, to me, one of the handful of best running backs in the country. I'm super excited about his season upcoming. The rest of the bottom of the league is dreadful. I don't know. I don't know what to expect from these guys. I think Georgia Tech and Duke may combine for like 3 wins if they're lucky this season. I don't know. Syracuse, I think, is probably a fair bit better than the rest of this tier. They just absolutely face a brutal schedule. I don't think they're going to win much of, but I mean, 4-8 year would be good given what they face.
Do you think that Dino gets another year if he goes 4-8 again, just because of how bad the schedule is?
What's the point in hiring somebody new? I don't know. Like, I mean, I don't think that it's a problem that Dino has right now. I think it's just the situation they face as a program in this conference. I just don't see how they improve upon what they're doing.
I don't have a whole lot to say about this tier, but I did do some real statistics and number crunching on Duke, and did actually determine that they're a basketball school. So that's all I have for them.
Yeah, not much to add on Georgia Tech, Duke. I kind of agree. I think Syracuse could be in a slightly higher tier than the other 2, but I don't mind you putting them in the same tier. But yeah, Sean Tucker definitely the brightest spot of this team, and but Pitt shut him down last year, made him look like nobody, and I expect them to do it again. So
that's always what counts too. We got to remember that, but. I'm excited. No, the bottom tier of the conference is pretty rough. The middle tier gets kind of interesting, but I think ultimately, I'm curious to see what your middle tier is. I guess let me say that I'm very much looking forward to seeing what you got here.
Okay, yeah. So we can move on to that middle tier, tier 3. It's got the majority of the conference, right? I think these teams can they all have a reasonable path to getting to 6-6 for most of them, and some of them should be actually good, depending on how their schedule falls. We'll go back and talk about all these teams in depth, but these 6 teams are Va Tech, Florida State, Boston College, North Carolina, Virginia, and Louisville in no particular order. I think that Louisville is probably the best out of the bunch there, but let's start with Virginia Tech. New head coach, defensively minded. I think that this is a kind of a team that you kind of check in on in a couple years based on seeing how Brent Pry's doing in recruiting and how that defense is coming along, because the offense is probably going to be dreadful this year because there's just no good players on it.
Yeah, I mean, bringing in a guy like Grant Wells is going to be pretty tough, right? Like, I can't imagine like we're going to see that much from him, just based on the fact that how often he turns the ball over at Marshall is pretty appalling, and I think that's not a recipe for a team that's going to pride itself on defense, is frequently turning the ball over. I guess I don't really understand the choice to bring him in. From that perspective, you think you want a quarterback who at least is going to just not fuck up your offense? You know what I mean? Like, I think you'd rather have a lower ceiling guy who doesn't ruin the season for you, as opposed to someone with maybe more playmaking upside, but is going to turn the ball over a lot. But I mean, the defense under Pry will be good, right? I think we can always expect that. I think he's had a top 20 defense in scoring or total offense for like 7 straight seasons. Incredibly consistent coordinator. Just a matter of him finding a way to develop any kind of offense here. And I don't know. Like you said, I think it's a couple years away, but I am intrigued by the program kind of trajectory under him after such a weird hiring cycle where they had him, they had Poindexter. It was kind of unclear who's going to get that job, and I don't know. I'm looking forward to kind of seeing what he does down there because I do think he's a good coach.
I will say I do like their O-line coach. Is Joe Rudolph, right? The guy from Wisconsin.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, I like him a lot. That should be a good unit under him, just based on his Wisconsin pedigree. Tyler Bowen is the OC. I'm not too familiar with him. Looking in right now.
He got hired. He was working for the Jaguars last season as their tight ends coach, I believe, in the Urban Meyer year.
Oh God.
Yeah, which is not exactly what you want to see from a new OC. I got to be honest, I don't understand that one at all. But I believe the reason he got hired because he was previously at Penn State alongside Pry and was familiar with him via that. But I definitely do not understand that hire. I mean, you're Virginia Tech, you can get a much, much better hire than that. But coaches are just not creative people. I don't know what to say. Like college football coaches are, they aren't particularly investigative of what's available to them. I don't really understand why they're so resistant to that.
Not a whole lot to add for Virginia Tech, like you said, kind of a feeling out process here. They do have one of the easier schedules, I guess, in the ACC. Out of conference games aren't too tough. West Virginia being the tougher one, and then they get us, Miami, and NC State. But overall, just playing in that side of the conference, in that division, they'll be all right because of that.
Yeah, agreed. I think, with new coach, it's going to take him a couple years probably, but, this year I think they'll just kind of be middle of the pack and nothing special this year out of the Hokies.
I think the other new hire, Virginia, with Tony Elliott going to the Hoos, are a good bit further along, just based on the kind of personnel they have this year. But I am curious to see how that kind of rivalry plays out over the next several years. But yeah.
Yeah, we can talk about them next, sort of that offensive and defensive foil for each other, because, probably being the former DC at Penn State, and then Tony Elliott coming from Clemson, who ran those, really good offenses with Trevor Lawrence and the quarterback who shall not be named before him. But my thing with Virginia is they still are not going to be able to run the ball. They were a terrible run team last year, and their defense really fell apart. They were getting in shootouts, pretty much every game. And, the O-line wasn't great. And I think that lack of a run game, even though, Brennan Armstrong is a really good quarterback, and he has a couple of really good targets who my brain is slipping right now.
The best one is Dontavian Wicks, who is their receiver out there. Really big fan of his. After that, I'm a little forgetful on as well, but they have a couple other receivers that I know people are pretty high on if you want to pull that up. But I'm definitely very impressed by Dontavian Wicks. Very strong player. The one thing I'm worried about with them, like obviously Brennan Armstrong is a very productive quarterback at this level. He is not the cleanest of the football. I think he's a little turnover prone, and he also loses basically his whole O-line. I think there's one or two starters back, which is a major concern for a team that likes to pass the ball as much as they do. I still think they're going to be a solid football team. Like the veteran leadership's going to count, just skill, talent, Armstrong. I believe they have a lot coming back in the defense as well. I can pull up my own preview there, but yeah, definitely not ideal for a passing-based offense to lose your entire offensive line. It's not. It's really what we in the business say. It's not what you want to see if you're that team.
The guy I was thinking about was a number 99 Keaton Thompson, who was just massive, 6'5", fast guy who always seemed to be open in the pick game last year. But that's the other standout name. But yeah, I mean, I think they do have enough high-end talent right between those two receivers and a serviceable quarterback in the ACC. But
yeah, Billy Kemp too is the other guy, the other receiver they have there. They're slot,
right?
No, but yeah, I mean they're two most experienced players are their two tackles, and they have 3 starts between them. That is that is not great for an offensive line and a first-year head coach. That is not what you want to see.
That's not great for any offense that you're running, let alone going to spread it out and, throw the ball as much as they want to. So I'm a firm believer in you're only as good as your offensive line. So that's why I think it'll be a little bit of a down year compared to what Virginia usually has because of that. But because they're still one of the middle of the road teams because of where they make up for it in the other areas at QB, receiver, and some of those other skill positions.
Yeah, and a strong staff here too. By the way, I want to point that out too. I really like the coordinator hires with Des Kitchings and John Rosinski. Rosinski comes from Air Force, where he just fielded a top 20 defense last season. And Kitchings has bounced back and forth between college and the NFL, but was most recently in college as the co-OC and running backs coach who recruited all of those 4-star running backs to NC State. He's known as a really strong recruiter. So I think if nothing else, this Tony Elliott staff is going to recruit the hell out of that side of the football and expect something there. Their quarterback coach, Taylor Lamb, also got a lot of pub because he was able to get Arch Manning to visit Virginia, which is pretty crazy. Obviously, they didn't land him, but I mean, hell, it's impressive for a first-year quarterback coach to get that even. So something to kind of watch among those guys.
Yeah.
That is actually crazy. I did not know that.
Yeah, former App State quarterback, it's his first year as a full-time QB coach, and at the P5 level, he was the OC for someone in the FCS the last couple years. Maybe it was Gardner Webb. He was the Gardner Webb OC the last couple years.
Now, are they going to run? I mean, obviously the offense is going to be sort of similar.
Oh, let me just stop it there. No.
No, are they going to be Mickey Mouse merchants? RPO, an RPO heavy team like Clemson was. Do you think, or because that lack of a run game sort of lets you sit back on the pass option?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think they're mostly just going to look to throw it over the yard. I mean, you might see some kind of some misdirection runs with the receivers. Like Billy Kemp in particular is a pretty skilled rushing threat, kind of coming motion out of the slot. I think you may see some of that. But in terms of traditional running the football, I don't know, those top 6 linemen from last year are all gone. It's just hard to imagine that works for them. It's possible. Crazier things have happened.
That's true. Okay.
Who else do we have in this? We have Boston College, North Carolina's in this tier. Who else?
Florida State and Louisville.
Okay. Boston College, absolute Mickey Mouse team. Nothing. They got nothing here. I cannot stand this team. I hate how much pub they get for being a clever defense or whatever with absolutely no proof behind it. They have one win against a team that was over 500 in their entire time under Jeff Hafley. 1-7 against teams with a winning record in his tenure. It's not very impressive to me. That team, by the way, was Pitt. Sorry, guys.
I know the exact game you're talking about too. They won on a missed extra point in overtime. So even that is a Mickey Mouse win against a over 500 team.
Yeah, a win like that in a like you said, in a pandemic year. Yeah, basically he's 0-7 in my mind. They brought in John McNulty as their OC, who the last time he was the OC and the only time he was ever an OC was the Chris Ash Rutgers teams. That's not great, obviously. Phil Jurkovec threw an insane number of interceptions last year, 9 interceptions on 450 attempts, which is really, really bad. He had, according to The Athletic, he was inaccurate on 21.8% of his pass attempts under 15 yards in depth, which was by far last in the country. And he was at 21.8%. No other quarterback in America was higher than 16.1%. Just winning by magnitudes. Their offense is going to be terrible, and their defense isn't pressure the football at all. I just don't see what to expect at this team at all. I think they're really, really overrated. And so is North Carolina, which basically just keeps getting good recruits and keeps losing despite that. They now have 3 consecutive top 15 recruiting classes in the door and no clear answers to any questions.
The thing with Boston College, right, is they only have Zay Flowers and Jalen Gill, and just that's it, and that does not work, especially when Phil Jurkovec is not an accurate passer even being kind to him. North Carolina, my thing with them is they had Sam Howell, who is, in current NFL quarterback. They wasted him ever since his freshman year. And now they have nothing really to show with any quarterback experience coming in behind him, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's Drake May or was it Jacoby Criswell, the guys who might start here. They're both. They're I don't know. They're both okay. Like they're both fine, I suppose. But they have no proof of anything working there, right? Like they have Josh Downs who kicks ass at receiver, but nothing else next to them. Gene Chizik is their fucking defensive coordinator, for Christ's sake, and he hasn't coordinated defense since 2017. He hasn't coached since 2017. When he was doing that, he was coordinating defense for UNC, who ranked 105th the country in scoring defense. Like, there's just no upside to this team to me at all. The only thing you're saying is just, well, they have 4- and 5-star talent, which is true, but no one on the staff seems to be able to coach them, which is a problem.
It seems like UNC is the Penn State of the ACC.
Oh, that's unfair. Penn State at least can win some games.
They at least wait till last couple weeks of the season to choke it down. But
exactly.
They literally have if you look at their talent, I think especially on defense, they definitely have some weapons too. But on defense, they're one of the on paper one of the better teams in the ACC. But then you get out there and it feels like they're in track meets all the time. They just can't. They have all this talent. They can't put it together. And losing their leader in Howell definitely doesn't help there either. So, Zach, it's kind of like your take for Texas too, right? Like that's another school that gets all this talent. They'll get this 4 or 5-star, but they just don't have that dog in them.
Yeah, I think the quote is like, they step off the bus and they have all this swagger, right? And then they actually start playing the games. It's like, oh, these guys actually just suck.
It's the candy ass baby blue.
Oh, that's a nice.
They are a candy ass program.
Their jerseys are awesome. Their jerseys are awesome. I was kidding.
Our candy ass program in their soul, though. I do love Josh Downs. I got to give him that. I do love Josh Downs.
Anything else on these programs? I think we moved to the 2 actually borderline good teams in this tier. If that's it.
Yeah, Florida State, Louisville.
You remember Luke May on UNC basketball? Apparently, Drake May is one of their quarterbacks that's battling for the starting position. So that was a fun fact I learned today.
Are they brothers?
They're brothers, yeah.
Four
right.
losers, huh?
They both can't win. Okay, let's move to actually good teams, right? Let's start with Florida State because, Ryan, I know you're really high on Florida State.
It feels so scary. Yeah, it's terrifying.
I want you to talk me through it because I'm starting to see the light, but this is still Florida State of the post Jimbo era. I'm not sure if I can really trust him yet.
Here's my pitch, right? So on the offense, Florida State's going to be starting Jordan Travis, who is a 5th-year junior quarterback. He started the final 6 Power 5 games of Florida State's schedule. He sat out against UMass with an injury and accounted for 1,600 yards and 21 touchdowns against just 2 turnovers in those 6 games. That's an average of 3.5 touchdowns a game, almost 300 yards a game in total offense. He completed more than 66% of his passes. He also has Trayshawn Ward and Lawrence Toafili back and the running back, who accounted for 1,000 yards of scrimmage between them at 6.5 yards per touch. And 6 of their top 7 pass catchers are also back, including Ward, who caught 22 passes. And they also add transfers from 2 blue chips in the Pac-12, Micah Pittman from Oregon and Johnny Wilson from Arizona State. They have 4 starters back on the O-line. 3 of them were sophomores last fall and were starting for the first time. 3 of them are sophomores this year who were starting as freshmen last year. And basically a very young O-line that I think should improve tremendously this season. I would be shocked if the offense is not at least above average. And then the defense is incredibly experienced, but 10 of their 11 starters... Sorry, I apologize. Let me take that back. 10 of their 11 defensive backs who led the team in snap counter back. They lost 1 corner to transfer. They have Jamie Robinson, who's a first-team All-ACC safety. Their top 4 linebackers and top 4 defensive tackles are all back, which basically means their only question mark on defense is at the edge and kind of pass rushing, right? And they did lose both Keir Thomas and Jermaine Johnson. The latter was a first-round pick and an ACC Defensive Player of the Year, although he probably shouldn't have been. Anyway, that's fine. He was still really good. But they do bring in Derek McClendon and Dennis Briggs Jr. are now back. And they also brought in a transfer who's Jared Verse of Albany, an FCS All-American. He had 14 and a half sacks in 15 games last year. Should be an immediate impact guy. I think basically as long as they can create any kind of pass rush, this defense should be very, very good. Like, should be a top 25 to 20 defense, in my opinion. The offense brings back everybody. There's no reason they should be productive. Basically, like, to me, the only reason you would bet against Florida State, if you look at their talent, their experience, their depth, their production last year, what if it's coming back, the only thing you could say is to why they're going to suck is, well, it's Florida State. They've always sucked lately. Like that, and which is valid. Like, I get that criticism. But they also have, like, if you look at the rest of their schedule too, in terms of what they have in front of them, they get 2 bye weeks. They have an FCS game. It's a very manageable road schedule. Like, a lot of things about this team make me just bet on them being better than expectations. I had them ranked at the fringe end of my top 25 actually preseason. I think they won't be tested. They have a really brutal 3-game stretch in October, but they won't be tested much besides that. And I think this team could pretty convincingly go like 9-3 or 8-4.
I will say I do like Jordan Travis as like, I'm not sure if he's like a real like top tier dual threat, but he does have some wheels, and I think that really showed in the Miami game last year where he brought them back to win at the buzzer. But they do get a lot of the good or better teams in the ACC in their schedule just because of the side of the division they play.
If you were to tell me they play like 5 of the top 6 teams in the conference and 2 SEC teams, I'm predicting them to win 8 games. I understand why you would think I'm fucking nuts. I do get that.
It's just tough. It's just tough sledding. I can kind of, now that you talk me through it, can see the potential there a little bit. Can definitely see why you're high on them. But you said you have them like 9-3.
I think they probably go 8-4.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, I think there's an argument they'd be favored in all but 3 games. Like, I think here's how I view the schedule, right? They open up with Duquesne, which they'll win. All respect to the Dukes. They get a neutral site game against LSU, who I think is going to suck this year. And I do think they'll win that game. They get a bye week before going on the road at Louisville. Excuse me. Pretty pivotal game there. I mean, catching the bye week early on before Louisville is nice. Louisville's in a pretty equivalent team. Getting them on the road is tough. But like, if they win that game, the rest of the schedule in front of them is they have a shot to win 8 games after that point, basically is what I'm saying. Because they get Boston College at home, they should absolutely beat. They get Wake at home. I do think they'll be underdogs in that game, but it's not unwinnable. Games at NC State and home against Clemson are very tough. Although losing a mid-October game to a conference opponent that's just okay would be a classic new Clemson move. Let's keep an eye out on that. And they get another bye week before they go in Georgia Tech, at Miami, at Syracuse, home against Louisiana, home against Florida. I think Miami is massively overrated, and they should not lose any of those last 5 games. So basically that like middle 5-game stretch that features at Louisville, at NC State, and home against Wake and Clemson is going to determine the season to me. Like, if they can win 1 or 2 of those games, this team should be very, very good.
Yeah, I think maybe that is a little bit like when you see Wake Forest, NC State, Clemson next to each other on the schedule, it kind of it just like looks tougher than it actually is. But yeah, I agree. That'll be a very interesting kind of litmus test for them those 3 weeks in October.
I will say it is good to catch Wake Forest and Clemson at home too. You don't have to go. You're at home for half those games. Miami is, I would say, probably a neutral field because they play in the NFL stadium. You can get your fans there. I'm wondering if Wake Forest, that game is more gettable the longer Sam Hartman is out with his non-football
that's
injury.
the thing, right? Like, if Sam Hartman's injured early on in the season, like, I think not injured, but say non-football injury.
I think it's a heart thing that came back up from his high school days, something like that.
And I believe they said he'll be back. Like, I think that was the word from
I believe their coach said he'll be back. They just don't.
Yeah, which is interesting. I mean, like, if he's back, then I think Wake Forest is the favorite here. But if he's not, all bets are off, right? Like, maybe I'm just over my skis. Maybe I'm way too confident. Like, it's very possible LSU just kicks their ass on December 4th, and I'm way wrong about Florida State. And if so, so be it, right? That's my cross to bear.
Well, yeah, that's the thing too. You'll figure it out. You'll figure it out pretty early on because I mean, like, Duquesne won't tell you much, but right after that, you'll figure out if they got it or not with LSU.
Yeah, I mean, you see them play LSU and Louisville in the first 3 weeks of the season, and that's all you need to know.
LSU is technically a neutral site game, but it's in New Orleans. I believe it's at the Saints Stadium, so it's pretty much a home game still for LSU.
I think that Florida State is not that far. I think the crowd will definitely will favor LSU, but I don't think it'll be like a 90-10 split or something like that.
Agreed.
Also, I really want Florida State to come play at Duquesne at the Bluff Stadium. That would be a very funny image just in my head.
Any day now.
It'd
All
probably
right.
sell out just because.
Oh, it would 100% sell out. How many people can they fit in that stadium?
I think they might have a 300-person bleacher. Do you think that Duquesne students would sell tickets to sit in their dorm rooms to watch over their field?
Yeah, that would be like one of the most like Florida State, even though they don't like have a huge presence, would flood that stadium, I think, just because there's probably 5,000 seats.
It's half that. It's 2,200.
Holy shit.
Hey, did you look it up? I was about to look it up, but
I did look. Oh, sorry. Yeah, it's 2,200 now. It used to have 4,500 until 2008.
Oh, break.
yeah, it is. There's no seating on one sideline. It's only on the other. Like, there's nowhere for fans to go. That would be
Just a funny visual.
Guys, we've got to pack out the Rooney. We need to get this home crown up for Florida State. They're gettable. All right. Let's move on to Louisville. I mean, this is the Malik Cunningham show, right? He is one of the best quarterbacks in the ACC. Obviously, the top dual threat. Scott Satterfield might be kind of building something here. If he can get a good season out of Malik Cunningham in his fourth year, who already has a total of 11,000 yards and 100 touchdowns for his career, coming back with a strong offensive line, like this could be a very strong team in a stacked Atlantic division.
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, they not just Malik Cunningham either on the offense. It's 4 of their 5 offensive line starters are back. They have 3 running backs who accounted for more than 500 scrimmage yards coming back. They lost Tyler Harrell in that notable transfer to Alabama. Although what's good is I'm sure you guys don't know anything about top end receivers transferring out of the program.
Oh man!
And then they did bring in Tyler Hudson from Central Arkansas, who is another FCS All-American and a finalist for the Walter Payton Award, which is like the equivalent of the Heisman for FCS ball. He had more than 3,000 yards at 18 yards per reception in his FCS career. Really good player. The rest of the receivers are pretty unproven. I think they like that sophomore Amari Huggins-Bruce a lot, but not a lot proven outside of that. I don't know. I think basically if they can find receiving targets from Malik Cunningham, this offense should be elite. It should be very, very good. We're not talking like Lamar Jackson offenses, but it should be still very solid. The defense, I don't know. They have Brian Brown here, a coordinator, who was really good at App State. I mean, he posted multiple top 10 finishes when he was the coordinator for the Mountaineers, but he just really has not been very good at Louisville. He really had a bad unit last year. They were below average in just about every category. But they do have more players with starting experience, and there are starting jobs available. And they also have an All-American candidate, Yasir Abdullah at linebacker. He had 10 sacks last year as an edge rusher. They had 3 safeties and 3 corners with at least a season of starting experience coming back. And one of them was that Florida State transfer that I mentioned. I don't know. I think like they should be improved. I think there's a lot of reason to expect they're going to be good. I don't know if they're going to be great, but it should just be a very solid football team, very experience laden. Like it could look something to me like what Pitt or Wake Forest did last year.
Mm-hmm.
Difference being, of course, the Pitt and Wake Forest aren't going away, right? Like Pitt and Wake Forest also bring back a ton of guys this year, and path isn't as easy as it was last season.
Yeah, I'm pretty high on the Cardinals this year also. He mentioned about Tyler Hudson transferring in. They also got a wide receiver transfer from Miami named D. Wiggins, who had a couple, a few 100-yard seasons for the Hurricanes 2 and 3 years ago. Last year, he was either hurt or didn't play. I don't remember, but they also added a running back to go along with Jalen Mitchell, who had over 500 yards and 6.5 yards to carry from Tennessee last year, named Tyon Evans. So I think they just have, they brought in some weapons to go along with the ones they already have. And if Malik can play well and use the weapons around him, I think their offense is going to be a lot of fun to watch. So I think they'll be definitely a contender in this conference.
Yeah, it's cool to see that offense come together. It feels like you're getting a little bit more and more of that in the ACC with Wake Forest and what Pitt did last year and some of these other schools. When we're not playing them, I think they're going to be a team that I tune in to and watch a decent amount for all those reasons that you guys said.
I will say, I think if anyone, say between like Florida State and Louisville, if one of those teams is going to break into that like top mesh on the top in that top tier of the conference, it's probably Louisville because I like their schedule a bit more. They go to Syracuse on the road, which is probably a win just because they don't have the offense that can keep up with Louisville. They go to UCF, which I think is a win. Florida State is a toss-up, but then they get South Florida at home, Boston College at home, and then they go on the road to Virginia. That's like 5-1 or 6-0, depending on how good Florida State is. So that's already you're knocking on the door of bowl eligibility. But then the second half of the season is you get Pitt at home off a bye week, but I think
it's bye weeks for both teams.
Yeah, you are right.
So we'll see who can out scheme.
You got Wake Forest at home. Once again, depending on Sam Hartman, James Madison at home, and then the end of the season is really brutal. Though you go to Clemson, NC State at home. Then you go to Kentucky, and they got absolutely turned into dust in last year's Kentucky game.
Yeah, Kentucky owns this team under Mark Stoops. It's been pretty interesting. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is you could argue like there's not really a single game on their schedule you would say they definitely will lose. But you could also argue there's like 8 games they're going to be in that are losable as well, like that aren't guarantees. Just a really high variance team this season. I'm not sure what to expect. If the defense is improved as they should be with the new talent they brought in and kind of the experience they have now, then this team can win the conference. This team could go like 12-0 with multiple ranked wins. Like they have that kind of potential in front of them given the schedule. They also could very easily end up like 6-6. Like both things are on the table. I don't know what to expect from them at all this year.
They are. I would tend to say they probably don't go 6-6, but
yeah, I'm exaggerating, of course. But I mean, it's unlikely, of course, they go 0 against like Florida State, Virginia, Pitt, Wake Forest, Clemson, NC State, Kentucky. But I wouldn't call any of those games safe either.
I absolutely agree. I think that they probably land somewhere in the middle there. Like I don't know, probably 8-4, something like that, just because the experience and talent of Malik Cunningham. That's in the ACC, Malik Cunningham will carry your program, especially with the offense that they ran last year, which seemed to work. Losing, and then bringing in other transfers to help replace Harrell, kind of soften the blow on offense. But I like them a lot. I think that they're just going to be a fun team to watch.
Yeah. Malik Cunningham is a junior, right? He's draft eligible after this upcoming year?
I think he's a senior.
Is he a senior?
That
Believe so. Dark horse Heisman candidate Malik Cunningham.
Yeah,
putting it out there.
Wouldn't be bad to sprinkle a little bit on there.
He is a redshirt senior.
Okay.
And he actually started 10 games his freshman year, so he's got a lot of experience. Just playing football. Okay, I think that about does it for the middle of the pack. There could be some upward mobility, some downward, maybe if you're low on Boston College or North Carolina or the Virginias. But I want to move into tier 2 now. these are teams that I think are going to be actually good. And I want to start with Wake Forest because I think that this Wake Forest team has the highest variance, maybe besides Miami, of how good they could be, and all is based on whether or not Sam Hartman plays.
Yeah, 100%, right? I mean, like, not necessarily the most efficient passer in college football. He still hasn't finished a season above 60% in completion and threw 14 picks last year. But he definitely just knows how to run this offense, which is very important given kind of some of the quirks of the claw offense, right? They have A.T. Perry and Donovan Green back at receiver, and they also have Taylor Moran and Keyshawn Williams in the slot. Blake Whitehart's there at tight end. They have 7 offensive linemen with starting experience returning. 5 of them are seniors or super seniors. They lost their leading rusher, Christian Beal, to transfer, but it's not the end of the world, really. I mean, it's not like they really run the ball that frequently. You know, he had 604 yards last season. Not impossible to replace by any measure. But like that offense, if it's coordinated correctly, I mean, like if the quarterback can pull the strings correctly on those decision makings, they're going to be as good as anybody, right? That they are that good with Dave Clawson. If the quarterback who replaces Sam Hartman while he's out is not capable of doing what he does and kind of filling that role, the bottom can fall off from this team, right? Like their defense is probably going to suck again. They've never really been able to stop the run. They give up way too many explosive plays. They have like 6 contributors to defensive line coming back to the 2 deep, but the linebackers are average to bad. The secondary has like 7 or 8 players took any kind of meaningful snaps last season back, but they're almost all at safety and they all sucked for the most part. Like they have a new coordinator in Brad Lambert, and if that kind of makes a difference, this team has a lot of upside. But this is a team that I think could be really damn good. But also if Hartman isn't back and the next quarterback that replaces him isn't that good, and if like Brad Lambert doesn't drastically improve the defense, this is also a team that have the bottom fall out, like given how tough their schedule is. There's a lot of potential for downward mobility here.
The backup quarterback listed on the website, by the way, is Michael Kern from Florida.
Oof.
He appeared in 3 games last year, but only threw 5 passes.
It's not what you want.
No, and my thing is, especially if Hartman's out, right, and you're going to your backup. I mean, the whole thing with the Clawson system is you keep these guys in the program for as long as you can to try and get them to learn everything they can. But I think that we saw in the Clemson game last year and the Pitt game in the ACC Championship that if your D-line is just better than Wake's, you will win the game. Like, it's easier said than done, right, is to just crash that long mesh point and cover it perfectly on the back end. But a better D-line than superior D-lines will beat Wake Forest, I think. And if you don't have Sam Howell to try and overcome that with a guy who knows how to run the offense so well, that does leave a lot of room for that team to slide back.
You also have that factor too of like, and we're going to have this a little bit too, since they were in the conference championship last year, like it's not a secret that they're kind of this up and coming program now. Like they beat a lot of good teams last year. They're going to get good shots from a lot of these teams that they beat, like Clemson, obviously, and that sort of thing. So it's just like not really any analytics, but the fact that whenever you have that target on your back, every game's a little bit tougher.
Yeah, right. I mean, Clemson and at Florida State in back-to-back weeks, then at Louisville and at NC State in back-to-back weeks. 2 tough stretches in their schedule there. They really have to be able to navigate well come out of this thing. Like, I mean, it could still very well go 10-2. Like, that's entirely possible if you get Hartman back in that window. It's not like these teams are all world beaters, right? Clemson, Florida State, Louisville, NC State, they all have their flaws. But risk is really there for Wake Forest.
I would say, other than those 4 games on the schedule, right, the remaining games are VMI at home, at Vanderbilt, Liberty comes to Wake Forest. You have Army at home in October, which will actually be very fun. It'll probably be another shootout like last year. You have BC at home. You have UNC at home in the weird non-con conference game. And then you get Syracuse and Duke to close out the season. I think if you're really low on what they are without Hartman, 7-5 is the worst. If Army can somehow pull off an upset, but with Sam Hartman, I think 10-2 is probably fair. Yeah.
Yeah, something like 10-2, 9-3 feels like the right season for them this year. It sucks that they're facing, like, aside from Clemson, who, like you mentioned, kind of has a defensive line that can really fuck up their match point. The rest of these teams, the problem they throw at them is just they may have offensive firepower and at least a competent defense, right? Like if Louisville, NC State, and Florida State all have competent defenses, they should have offenses that can keep pace with Wake's. And Wake can't say the same on defense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it definitely helps them that their first 3 games are against VMI, Vanderbilt, and Liberty. Gives Hartman a little bit more time to come back without really playing anybody that they really have to worry about. I mean, I think ideally if you're a Wake fan, you want him back for that Liberty game just so that he can get a game under his belt before they play Clemson. You don't want him to come back and just immediately have to play that Clemson defense. But I'm not sure what the situation is with him. I don't think anybody really does. So, I mean, we'll see. I'm not sure when he'll be back, but I think definitely it all comes down to when he plays and how well he plays when he does come back.
Sure. What else do you guys have in this tier?
Let's move on to Miami, and then we can go Clemson and Pitt, and then we'll finish up with NC State at the end.
Yeah, so Miami, and this team is getting a lot of hype, right? Like there is a lot of a crazy amount of like national media starting to get into this Miami team. I think a lot of it, people seem to think that Tyler Van Dyke is like a first-round quarterback. I know Pitt and NC State fans feel that way after the games that he had against them, which is very valid. But the rest of his season was kind of not really anything special to me. I think he was very compelling in those 2 games. Those do matter, but his other games against the 4 quality opponents he had, if you want to call them that, in Virginia, North Carolina, Florida State, Virginia Tech, he completed just 51.3% of his passes in those games, with 9 touchdowns against 5 interceptions, 7.4 yards per attempt. Like it's great to beat up on Duke and Georgia Tech, but like the rest of their conference schedule, aside from Pitt and NC State, he was pretty bad. And he seems to kind of be a guy who relies on the deep ball, which may not always fly in year 2, right? We on the football the field, we compared him, we called him the white Dwayne Haskins. And then at the college level, he just always is throwing deep bombs and has crazy touch on them, which is awesome. But then when you get teams that actually know how to defend you and see tape on you, like Dwayne's, second year as a starter, when he got to the NFL, teams saw he could only throw the deep ball, and all of a sudden they start taking that away with deep safety help, and it doesn't work as well. And it's not like they have Josh Gaddis, who won the Broyles Award, I understand, but I would not call it the most creative coordinator in the world. I think it's kind of a step down from Rhett Lashley, who left to go be the head coach at SMU. They do have 4 offensive linemen back to start. Zion Nelson at left tackle should be a draft pick for sure, and DJ Scapes, an all-ACC guy at right guard. But their running backs suck, in my opinion. Like Jalen Knighton averaged less than 4 yards per carry, 3.8 yards per carry last season. They have Will Mallory at tight end, but the skill core is pretty unknown. Like a lot of transfers coming in. Frank Latz from Clemson, but no one really I would call proven at all. The defensive side of the ball is a different story. They should be very, very solid. Kevin Steele is coordinating the defense there, the longtime Auburn coordinator who got hired at Maryland, and then before he even set up his desk was hired by Miami. They do have 6 starters back, defensive tackle, 2 linebackers, a corner, and 2 safeties, and they also brought in 7 transfers that had some starting experience, and a crazy defensive staff overall with Charlie Strong at linebackers and co-DC, Jamil Adai at the secondary, and Joe Salaveye at defensive line, who's the longtime Oregon D-line coach. They basically should have a very strong defense, but I think the offense is deeply overrated.
Yeah, I guess the thing I've been thinking about with Miami is that looking back at Mario's tenure in Oregon, he was always liable for like one really stupid loss, like, Stanford last year as an example, to a completely inferior team. Or, I don't know if this is specific to Utah, but when he got manhandled twice by Utah in 1 year and didn't really seem to change anything about his game plan between the beating they got in the regular season and the postseason, like that kind of stuck with me as like, there's something here that we're not seeing. Is like, are we overrating the defense? I mean, I know they have a ton of talent, but it seems that they really got messed up by Utah in particular, the run-heavy team, which you don't see a lot of in the ACC. But I don't know. That's just something I've been thinking about.
Yeah. I mean, it's a lot of that hype is just from, I think, the recruiting classes that Cristobal's already been able to do, taking them from I think they were in 40 or 50 up to close to the top 10. I think it's at 15 or something. But schedule talk, Zach, if they do kind of go down that same road and they have that dumb loss that kind of does them in, who is that this year on the schedule?
Oh, I think you have an automatic loss to A&M. They're just that defense is much better than their offense. They'll probably lose to Clemson. Once again, really good defense. Obviously, I'm going to pick them to lose to Pittsburgh, but I'm deeply frightened about that game. If it's a dumb loss, or seen as dumb, right? Florida State or Virginia Tech.
I think what's worth pointing out here is that Pitt, Clemson, Texas A&M are all going to beat them the same way, which is just by kicking their ass on the D-line, right? And assuming that they can't do anything about it, which I don't think they can. Florida State, I think, is just a more complete team that already beat them last year, if I recall correctly.
Oh, yeah, they did.
I mean, I don't know. I guess I don't see what people think is special about Miami. I guess the thing is just a lot of big-name defensive hires, which I think will make a very good defense. I don't know if it's this season. That a quarterback people seem to think is good that I don't really agree with. So I guess if you think Tyler Van Dyke's a first-round quarterback, I think he's like Justin Herbert or something, then yeah, you should be high in Miami. But if you think he's just another kind of early hype quarterback, if he's more Sam Howell than Justin Herbert, then this team is going to go 8-4.
Justin Herbert famously completely utilized well at Oregon the last place Mario Cristobal coached.
Great point. Josh Gaddis, I mean, have we seen him ever produce a good passer? He had fucking Cade McNamara last year. That guy sucks.
Who did he have at Alabama?
Was he ever OC there?
I think he was there.
I don't believe he was ever the play caller. Josh Gaddis. Let's see. Yeah, he was the co-OC, but wasn't he Kiffin's assistant? Not Kiffin's assistant, somebody else. Let me pull it up really quick. Let's see. It was OCs were Mike Loxley and Josh Gaddis. Loxley was the one who called the plays there. Because famously Gaddis left because he wanted to call the plays. They had beef.
Right, yeah.
So their quarterback, that was what, the Tua year? No, that wasn't Tua. Was that Tua's last year? Remember?
That was the Tua year that Jalen Hurts came in the SEC championship game.
Yeah, that sounds right. That sounds right to me.
Yeah, I'm looking at the schedule now. Well, I don't know. It's a weird transition, but speaking of the team they lost to last year, Clemson. This is one of our top tier teams. I think really just based on the defense, because as willing as I am to tell you that Dabo's downfall is imminent and that this program is going to go back to not competing for a title year in and year out, that defense is still atrociously talented on the D-line. But once like you've heard many times this offseason, they had to promote from within for the Dabo system to get new coordinators. Replacing Brent Venables is no easy task. And then DJU just kind of stinks.
Yeah, he sucks, man.
He's not fixable? I play devil's advocate here.
He's fixable, right? But I mean, I wouldn't bet on it given the staff they have, right? Losing their OC, they're all of their best receivers are pretty much gone. Their offensive line's still gonna suck. I would say they probably got worse on offense this past year, if anything. Maybe he's just more accurate, but to be honest, he lost them several games, right? How big of a jump is he gonna take?
Yeah, no, I'm with you. It's definitely not going to happen with what they have now. It's just you look at the AP poll, and this is the only reason I'm everybody still thinks that Clemson's going to be good, and I don't know what they're seeing because they're watching these games too. They see that they're no good at quarterback. They have to replace some coordinators. I guess they're just kind of doing the same thing that we are and staying high on the defense, right?
Yeah, I mean, this defense is going to be sick, right? There's 5 or 6 players deep on the defensive line are absolutely unreal with Brian Breezy, Miles Murphy, Tyler Davis, Xavier Thomas, KJ Henry, Justin Maskell, and that's just defensive ends, right? I believe the defensive tackles group is even deeper. I guess Breezy kind of rotates, but our linebackers should be better by attrition, just losing the old white guys they had there. They have a pretty green secondary, but the pressure they're going to get in that D-line from the D-line is just absolutely nuts. I just think that, I don't know. I think that basically if that defense is anything less than top 10 in the country, yeah, this team's going to suck. They're probably going to lose 4 or 5 games, but they shouldn't be worse than that. I think I'd be pretty shocked if they were worse than that, and especially catching Wake Forest early if Hartman could be out. They get NC State at home, which is beneficial for them. And from there, it's just Florida State and Notre Dame on the road, and Louisville, Miami at home. It's a pretty manageable schedule if they get through those early kind of challenges.
So I would say right now, probably their best player on offense, because I wouldn't say DJU, is probably Shipley, the running back. Maybe there's a case for they have one good tall. I think it's Ajo, who's just good and tall. The Clemson jump ball receiver model. But if DJU really stinks it up, what do you see the timeline for of them maybe going to Klubnik?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know. I mean, I don't know that I'd ever think that going to a true freshman would solve the issues. But I could be wrong. Is there any guarantee he's better? I don't know.
I mean, they did it with Kelly Bryant and Trevor Lawrence.
I was going to say,
true, but it's a little different, right? Kelly Bryant wasn't highly regarded at all. I guess the question is, do you think the problem with DJU is that he just became a dramatically worse quarterback from year 1 to year 2, or is it their offensive play call? There are things that he was actually bad at himself too, but also I think that probably the play calling, the offensive design was pretty shitty. And I don't know if those things are going to get any better this year. And I don't think there's any talent around him. I think there's a lot of problems beyond just DJU missing throws that contribute to this offense being bad.
I was just going to say one positive I'll say about DJU. This offseason, it sounds like he's lost 30 pounds. I know that he was pretty immobile last year and sounded like he was throwing entirely with his upper body. So it sounds like they were trying to work on him with that this offseason, and he was trying to work on that to throw with his legs as well and, lose some weight to try and gain some mobility back. So I'm not going to rule out that he has a bounce back season. He was terrible last year, and I think he was definitely the reason why they lost the single game last year. This defense is unreal. I think this might be literally the best defense that they've had under Dabo. Brian Brzee is an absolute freak. He's going to be a first-round pick. They're probably going to have multiple first-round picks off this defense. I think this defense, even if the offense kind of stinks, is going to keep them in any game, regardless. So if DJ can pick it up a little bit, and if he doesn't, I think Cade is a stud behind him that could come in if he is struggling. But I think this defense alone is going to keep them in games. And if the offense can put up just, decent numbers, I think they'll win a lot of games. So that's my logic for why I think people are pretty high on them again. And I mean, last year they still finished 10-2 despite how bad DJ was.
It was 9-3, right?
Yeah, it was 9-3 because they got their 10th win in bowl season.
You're right.
Still, point holds.
Yeah. Regardless, how bad they looked on offense last year, they still finished 9-3. If the defense is even better this year and the offense can, pick it up a little bit, they didn't lose those games by a whole lot last year either, the ones that they did lose. So, they could very easily bounce back and be, an 11-win team.
How much did Dabo pay you to say that?
I will say, Brian Brzee is a freak. I'm super high on the defense. I'm not. Trust me, I want to bash him. I want to bash Dabo so bad, but I do think this is one of the worst offenses they've had under Dabo. But it's, if not the worst, but the defense is probably the best. So we'll see.
You can't see this at home, but Ken is wearing a bright pink tuxedo with Dabo Sweeney tailored into the pocket there.
Go.
NIL everybody.
He's in the pocket of Big Dabo, Big Clemson. All right,
No, I'm with you. I could see that too.
Let's move on. Let's talk about Pitt. The reason that we're all here, truly. So even though Narduzzi has not announced a starting quarterback yet, all the reporting out of camp from the beat guys and observers are saying that Slovis is likely to win the starting job. So that will fill the hole left by Kenny Pickett. Probably not completely. The other departure, Jordan Addison, you're probably going to see that his production being replaced by Kanata Mumpfield, the Akron transfer. As far as the rest of the wide receiver room, I do like Jared Wayne. He was pretty good last year for Pitt. I believe he had about 500 yards. I'm pretty big on Bub Means, the Louisiana Tech transfer as well, to kind of fill the deep threat role that Taysir Mack had last year. And then looking to get more production, have younger guys like Jalen Bradley and Jalen Barden. Gavin Bartholomew was really good at tight end last year. He's not the best in the nation. That's the kid from Georgia who I can't think of right now. O-line brings everybody back, as well as two guys who have meaningful experience who can play. I believe they each swinged. I think one's a swing tackle, one's an interior guy. So that's good backup for any O-line injuries that might happen. And then the defense is the D-line is probably 12 guys deep. The secondary is going to be sort of your classic Narduzzi secondary where it is boom or bust. They leave their guys out on islands. The only reason for concern, I think, is the linebackers. But you have Servassier Dennis coming in, who is an all-world linebacker for Pitt, who can really kind of pick up the slack as maybe a guy like Bengali Kamara comes into his own at the linebacker position.
Yeah, it should be a super interesting team, right? I mean, I think the biggest question that we're all looking to see is kind of just what happens with the quarterback and passing game in general. It's no secret that it's some pretty huge shoes to fill with Kenny Pickett and Jordan Addison, and trying with Kanata Mumpfield to do that, and Gavin Bartholomew is leading targets with Keaton Slovis on the ball is maybe easier said than done. I'm not super high on Frank Snetti, to be honest. As a coordinator, I'm not really excited by that hire. Side is there, right? This Pitt defense should be among the best in the country. I think they have potential to win 10 games again solely because of that. With, like you said, Clancy, Baldonado, Alexandre, Danielson, Green, Bentley, Morgan, all back at D-line. Servassier Dennis, of course. I like Shane Simon and Tyler Wiltz as transfers. 3 secondary starters. Like a lot of things to like on defense. Running game should be great, that O-line. It just, like, the question of this team being, like, the difference between, like, a 9-win team and a conference title contenders / double digits win team is just what do we see from Keaton Slovis and from these receivers? Because, I mean, that's kind of the biggest question, right? If Slovis looks like he did in 2019, then this team can go as far as it wants to. If he doesn't, upside's quite a bit lower, right?
Yeah. My thing with Cignetti is I don't think it was the best possible hire. I think they should have retained Brennan Marion because I really liked how they ran the ball at the end of games last year. They were using that go-go offense influence, that loaded pistol look. With Cignetti, I mean, obviously you're going to expect more running, but that still doesn't mean, like, when he was at Boston College, they didn't shy away from running the football. I think with a senior O-line and 3 capable running backs in the backfield, one would hope that Keaton Slovis doesn't have to do as much to win games and that a good running attack helps the offense overall. But I could see it going either way where Pat wants to run the fuck out of the ball and all of a sudden, we're down 14 points because we haven't thrown the ball, besides on 3rd and long.
Yeah, it seems like his desire, right? It's kind of what he wants out of the offense. But I don't know. I mean, I'm high on Pitt this year. I think Pitt is a clear team that's clearly going to finish ranked. I think it's a very manageable schedule, all things considered. Right? I mean, like I think that Tennessee is a real challenge, and those road games at Louisville and Miami are tricky. But the rest of the schedule, I mean, like unless they go over, I don't think there's any way they go less than 10-2 this season. I'm sure I'm cursing you guys by saying that, but I don't know. The Tennessee game's super exciting, right? That should be an awesome game.
Yeah, those first couple weeks are going to be pretty telling for what we have going on. But it's always good to like get an outside perspective, because I know we talk about it a lot on here and we kind of talk ourselves up and down the hill on where we're going to be. So I'm glad to hear we're not crazy for thinking we're a double-digit team.
Yeah, for sure. And also, guys, on that note, I do have to run and get out of here. I'm sorry to cut it one team short. I know I went a couple minutes. I gotta jet, unfortunately. But NC State national champions 2022. You heard it here first. Not really, but they'll be very good. I'm looking forward to the Pitt NC State conference championship game we're getting this fall.
Real quick, who's your winner?
Ooh, I'm taking NC State to win the conference. I think they're going to go 11-1 in the regular season, finish 12-1, and I think maybe make the playoff. I don't know. We'll see.
All right, thanks for joining us.
So much for having me, guys. Yeah.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Be sure to plug your stuff at the end of the show too.
Oh, thanks, brother. All right, I'll talk to you guys soon. Hopefully, see you guys on the meetatmidfield.com boards. Take it easy, guys.
All right.
He did say he had a time crunch, but that's fine. We can. I can talk us through NC State real quick.
Let's do it.
All right. I am similarly high on NC State. I have an active bet on them to win. I think it was over 8.5 games. And really, it's sort of the Kenny Pickett effect, right? I think that Devin Leary is going to be by far and away the best quarterback in the conference, and he's already somewhat proven. Like, I think he had like an interception rate. Yeah, so he had a 1.16 interception rate last season, and like that's low even by NFL quarterback standards. He had over 3,400 yards, north of 65% completion percentage. The question though is, like, you lose Ike Ekwonu at left tackle, but you have a backup ready to slot in. The O-line has been really good for years. The NFL players they lost, though, Ricky Pearson and Bam Knight at running back, and then Emeka Emezi at wide receiver are gone. Excuse me. You have to see like guys like Devin Carter, Trent Penix, and Chris Tootle at tight end step up for the passing attack while they figure out that rushing attack, because that was sort of underwhelming last year for NC State on the offense side of the ball. If you go to the defense, they bring back 2 first-team All-ACC players, an honorable mention All-ACC player, and then 2 other players with starting experience, and that is just at linebacker. That's Drake Thomas and Peyton Wilson. They're 2 of the best linebackers in America, 2 of the best linebackers in the league. All 5 starters in the secondary back. 3 of them are all ACC. You have all ACC safety Tanner Engel leading the group. The defensive line is less proven, right? You have still an first team all ACC performer in Corey Durden at DN, but you have guys with starting experience. They just haven't been recognized by the awards that these other guys have. They were top 15 in SP Plus on the defensive side of the ball. And I think that this team and its how far it can go this year boils down to one game, and that is the Clemson game. I believe their Week 5 matchup.
Yeah, it is. It's Week 5 at Clemson, which was, I know when they were playing in Raleigh last year when they had that upset win, that was kind of like their coming out party. So that'll definitely be like that's going to decide, in my opinion, that's going to decide that side of the conference on October 1st.
Oh, absolutely. I think that's nothing short of like the winner of that. I don't think like if they beat NC State, their only real tough games. I mean, so they follow up Florida State after Clemson, but that's at home. But then they get Wake Forest at home, who they only lost to by 3 in overtime last year. And then they get Louisville on the road to end the season. But even if you could make the argument that they might lose those games down the stretch, I don't think they wouldn't be favored in any of those games. And speaking about that one game, deciding the season. If you are a gambler, right? If you go bet NC State to win the division or the conference, I believe they're around plus 800 for the division and plus 900 for the conference. I would take that bet as a heavy money line play on that NC State Clemson game.
Yeah, I don't hate that. I don't hate that at all.
Anything else to say before Devin Leary brings the conference to its knees?
See ya in Charlotte.
Yeah.
I'm pretty high on this team. I think they remind me a lot of Pitt in the sense that I feel like they just have a lot of returning guys that really just are hungry to get to the ACC championship and win it. So in that sense, like, I'm pretty high on them. I think Devin Leary is very solid. So if he can stay healthy and, like you guys said, I think October 1st, that Clemson NC State game, I think that decides the winner of the Atlantic. So.
Yeah, and how close were they last year? Because they were like, they needed something to have, like, there was a possibility up until like the very last week, right?
Yeah, them, Wake and Clemson all like in the last week, like any of them could have won it based on tiebreakers and such, I think.
Yeah, so what happened was that NC State beat Clemson but lost to Wake Forest. Clemson beat Wake Forest but lost to NC State. So how it went was Wake Forest had to lose in the final week for NC State to win. They ended up beating Boston College. So that eliminated them straight up off the jump. But they were one game away from being Pitt's opponent in the championship game instead of Wake Forest, and that one game was by 3 points.
Yeah, so they definitely have that taste in their mouth of they probably thought they could have put up a better fight than Wake Forest did last year, which we'll never know, obviously. But, when you're that close and then you see the performance that the team that got there instead of you, that offseason is a little bit shorter.
Yeah, the other thing with them, too, is that their bowl game against UCLA got canceled, like, last second. It was, like, the day of.
That's right.
Yep.
So, and they were pissed about that. I think weren't they like barely talking at media day? And yeah, I think they're still pissed about that as well. I think they have a huge chip on their shoulder and they're going to basically come out looking for blood this year.
I mean, between that getting canceled, which stopped them from getting their first 10-win season forever, combined with, I think it was not this year, but the year before, the College World Series, where the entire NC State men's baseball team got DQ'd.
Yeah.
For COVID reasons, they have an enormous chip on their shoulder with regards to the NCAA.
I've not had the best luck with that as of late, for sure.
No, sir. You guys want to make some predictions? Conference winners?
Let's do it.
Yeah.
All right. Earlier, Ryan said he was taking NC State over Pitt. I'm going to go Pitt over NC State. I think that NC State just has the better quarterback and will win the Clemson game.
Man, I don't know. It's really a toss-up. It's a coin flip for me between NC State and Clemson. Just because, like, I don't know. I feel like with NC State beating Clemson last year, like, I feel like that's tough to do two years in a row. So I'm gonna go Clemson out of that side of the division and Pitt out of the Coastal. Pitt winning it all again. Not biased.
Hashtag not biased.
Yeah, shocker. It's a clean sweep. I'm gonna go with Pitt as the winner. And then out of the Coastal, I'm with Mason. I think it is tough to beat them twice. I'm rooting for NC State, and I want them to win the Atlantic so bad. As you guys heard my spiel about Clemson earlier, though, I don't know. I think this defense is too good. I see them coming out of the Atlantic, so I'll go Pitt over Clemson.
I'm with you there, though, Kent. Like, would rather, like, it's always fun to have like the new teams in there. So if NC State wins it, that's kind of like what I'm rooting for. But maybe it's just a cynic in me that I feel like Clemson's going to be like Darth Vader coming back to what
exactly.
Do you think that if Sam Hartman comes back in time for the Clemson game, would you consider them to be in the play for winning the division again?
Wake Forest, I see them taking a step back, to be honest. I mean, I'm sure if there's a Wake Forest podcast out there, they're probably saying the same thing about us. But, I don't know. I don't see them beating NC State and or Clemson for that division this year.
Yeah, couldn't have said it better. They'll be up there, but I think down the stretch, there's those two teams are just have another gear compared to Wake Forest. It's the defense.
Yeah. I mean, Wake Forest is going to have to win massive shootouts in order to stay in the division race. And people forget, if they did lose to UNC last year, a not so great UNC team, and the only reason they didn't fall out of the conference title race is because that was a non-conference game. So even Wake Forest did lose to some lesser teams last year.
Yeah. I mean, Pitt barely escaped that, but let's not get into semantics.
Thanks for tuning in to our ACC preview. Once again, thanks to Ryan. We're sorry he had to leave early. You can find Ryan's Twitter account. It's at B1G_Ryan. He mentioned Meet at Midfield. That is his venture. It is a new college football website, reporting, forums. It's mainly focused on Ohio State and Michigan, as it is a joint venture between his podcast, Flipping the Field, and The Bucket Problem, which is a Michigan podcast. You can find Meet at Midfield. Their Twitter is at Meet at Midfield, as you would expect. It's meetatmidfield.com. I am a member. I'm having a great time on the forums. It's good reporting if you don't want to get the same old, bland ESPN covers that you might be used to. As always, you can find our account at SimplifiedPod on Twitter. Make sure to download the episode so we know we're listening. That's how the make sure to download the episode if you're listening. That's how the statistics get sent back to us. Leave us a review, 5 stars if you like it. Follow the podcast, follow the Twitter. You can find me at I'm Real Angry. You can follow Mason at Clayson _Ming. You can find Kent at Kenton _VW. All those accounts are in the bio of the podcast on Twitter. And with that, we'll see you next time.
Hail to Pitt.